am talking about weird stuff, Jamie. Let's say hello, thank you, and welcome to Cinema Life and Everything. Hard to find on YouTube. We're gonna try and get it up a bit more now as well. But Happy New Year, mate, and how are you doing today?
Happy New Year to you, Phil. Yeah, I'm doing okay. Doing okay. Went for a little recovery period over the Christmas time. Nursing a couple of injuries, but yeah, much needed. But yeah, I had a really hectic year this year. Probably one of the probably the busiest I've had in CCMA's history, I think. So it's
Wow, awesome.
that's been really good. So yeah, it's good just to have a chat at this another very I wouldn't even say it's a tangenting subject, something completely separate to all the things I've been involved with doing. So I'm just enjoying the indulgence here.
Well, I had a recovery period over Christmas, but it mainly involved me eating lots of my niece's tiramisu, which
Yeah, I know that.
she
Yeah.
makes me one. But so yeah, so today, Jamie, what? Okay, actually, before we get started, I was just going to say, in case people haven't seen the original episode with you, would you just like to explain a little bit about yourself, what you're up to, what you and and just so people can get to know you a little bit better.
Okay, yeah, just very quickly then. My name's Jamie Clubb. Relevant to this particular movie choice, should we say? I grew up in a very old travelling circus tradition. Left it when I was about 7 years old. Parents then got involved with training animals for the film industry. Built a zoo back in the middle of the Cotswolds. I got involved in martial arts probably from the age of about 13. That became my own particular interest. My main sort of twin interests have always been writing and martial arts, self-protection. I'm now a full-time martial arts teacher. I only teach private lessons and seminars internationally and nationally, and one-to-one lessons and small group teaching lessons. I did teach club for about 10 years, and prior to that, taught for somebody else. I've been involved with media, show business all my life, but it's not necessarily always been directly connected to my career. It's just been part of my culture, part of my upbringing, and the connections from that. And that's probably about it, really, to be honest, without getting too much of a deep dive. Yeah, but have to watch that wording when we keep saying deep dive for this particular movie choice.
I was going to say it's a wonderful segue already. So talking about diving,
Yes,
the
yeah,
start of this film has a girl that I don't know if she's diving, but she's definitely swimming. It doesn't end too
yeah,
well. But today
yeah,
we have decided to do a deep dive on, I would honestly say, the first ever summer blockbuster,
yeah.
Jaws, which is an incredible one to talk about. So, mate, where would you like to start? With the first time you
Uh,
saw it, or how you become aware of it, or?
Well, I have written some notes.
Oh.
I have to say, it's an intimidating movie. I have to be completely
What?
yeah, to be honest, because when you last had me on the show, I came up with my three favorite films.
Great
I've got a
film.
lot of favourite films, but the three films that when I was cornered by somebody and they asked, what are your three favourite movies? Go on, just say it. And I just blurt them out and almost surprised myself.
Mm.
And I wouldn't say they're obscure movie choices so much, although they're not that well known, except for A Few Good Men, which has an impact on culture and it is a lot more well known than the other two. But let's just say they're kind of movies that aren't don't have anything like the focus of this particular film that we're going to talk about. Which, when I was cornered, I was asked, "What's your favourite horror film?" And again, I surprised myself with my answer. It was one of
Mm.
those sort of things. It's honestly, it's quite an interesting exercise. I think when somebody just you're not prepared, you're not at all prepared. Someone goes, "Boom, favourite horror film." Like that,
Sort
like
of.
that, and you've got to go straight out with it. So and then I came straight out Jaws. And I went, "Oh, is it?" And I thought, because there's lots of reasons why would I like Jaws? This seems like the weird thing, and obviously from uh, a film analysis point of view, or I know we're not so much being into film analysis, we're more about this show's more about talking about the film and what impact it has on your life
Yeah, yeah.
and things like that. And well, it'd be very easy to sort of reconstruct a history, if you like, and say, "Oh, my father's a wild animal trainer, got in the, it's been in, trained lions and tigers and just about any other type of wild animal you could imagine." And he became an aquarialist, tropical marine fish.
Mm.
He's had his own sharks, including like black tip reef sharks of the sort of, that familiar torpedo-shaped shark that a lot of people worry about and that sort of thing. And he's been involved in natural history documentaries and had, books given to him by famous aquarialists and oceanographers and things like that. And said one book he's got is from a person who my dad was doing a TV show for him with where they're setting up sharks in an aquarium. And it's a natural history documentary drama or something along those lines. And the guy dedicated a book, not dedicated, but so he gave him a signed copy. And inside the book it says, from a man who has sharks in his typewriter to a man who has sharks in his living room, and that was dedicated to, that was the inscription inside the book to my dad. So it would be really easy for me to go, oh yeah, well my dad of course was an expert on sharks. But that's bullshit. That would be a complete lie. I grew up on a traveling circus. The closest thing we came to anything to a sharks was an aquarium that my dad did put in our wagon, which was just filled with freshwater fish, so goldfish. And I think the most exciting fish in that collection was a black moor. I absolutely loved it, but still, it's hardly the shark from Jaws,
Mm.
in terms of that. But that was really it in the aquarium. The main thing was like there's a full-on running circus at the time. Um, and yeah, so Dad only really got to tropical marine fish much later. So no, I can't say that's that. I can't say, I could say, oh, my grandfather was, president of the Dartford Swimming Club or something along those lines, and they were all avid swimmers. They were all avid swimmers, but I wasn't an avid swimmer.
Mm.
To this day, I'm not a strong swimmer to this day, but I enjoy swimming. I enjoy swimming very much as a rehab exercise, actually. We're talking about injuries and recovery or things like that swimming has only been my sort of go-to for recovery. If I have any injuries or any sort of thing like that, I like to get into a swimming pool as soon as I can. And it's a
Yeah.
great form of, and I love it as a warm down. I tell you, if I'm on a holiday and I've got a hotel, there's nothing better for me than having a full-on workout and then jumping in the pool just to stretch everything out. I
Yeah.
absolutely love having a swim afterwards. So, but no, no fascination with. No, I was never into fishing. Can't. I'm not a fisherman. I'm not interested in fishing. I've never been into sailing. I did surfing for the first time last year in my life, and failed miserably several times with that. And my daughter did a very much better job than me on that one. Loved it, thoroughly enjoyed it. Can't say I didn't enjoy it. Like really, loved going down to went down to St David's with my godfather, and we did and it's his sons are avid surfers and they just live the surfing life, and there's me like falling all over the place over the surfboard making a complete idiot of myself, but loving it. And that, but no, can't say I've I like beaches and stuff like that, but I can't say it's a massive like love of it. I'm not the man of the sea. I'm not a sailor. I'm never in the navy. So there's none of those sort of connections that I could say to be honest about my influences for Jaws. So it already comes down to the fact that it is an amazing film.
Yeah.
It's just a really, really good film. And sorry, go on, Phil.
I was going to say, and the book before it as well. I think Peter Bletchley really managed to, because one of the best things about horror, or exactly, amazing. That's a good quote.
First UK edition. First
Yeah, I
UK
was going to
edition.
say that's better than my one. No, I've got, but like how truthful it was to the source material, Steven Spielberg, but still managing to identify a place where humans don't know too much about, and also they don't feel as safe when there's a natural predator in that water. That's going to be a lot better. We realize, oh, we're not as good in this sort of arena as we think we are. So it's good. It takes us into the unknown. It takes us into an area as humans we don't feel as strong as we could do in others. And then has this sort of hidden assailant, this hidden sort of terror that is, I think Spielberg, as I'm going to jump a little bit, but Spielberg is, a lot of the book takes place in the dark. I think Spielberg is very good, and he does this throughout his films, which I always find very interesting, that he does horrific scenes in broad daylight because he wants to draw to the fact that it isn't always in the dark where terrible things take place, and especially like the blood fountaining out of the water in
Yeah.
like Kubrickian, like yeah. Anyway, so I'm jumping around a bit, but yeah, just I was always very impressed by that he managed to manufacture, find a concept that had real drama and real stakes in it, and made the heroes like the underdogs.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you've got that H.P. Lovecraft sort of feel of
That's a good reference.
yeah, with like being, it's the unseen terror that you get there. I mean, Lovecraft had a great sort of idea of the Leviathan kind of fear, and there's some remarkable pieces of artwork that are often inspired by Lovecraft, but even before Lovecraft, right back to our deepest fears. We go back to sort of, Jonah and the whale, this sort of, the idea of, biblical ideas of giant, sea monsters and all this sort of thing that we've got. I mean, there's sometimes you see these amazing paintings. Have you seen them where they do pictures of sea monsters and of whatever description they are. They're often a sort of if you Google Leviathan, for example, you'll
Mm,
see these pictures of these immense monsters, and they'll show you the comparison with a human being, and often at sea, and it's just that
yeah.
feeling of immensity that you get. I mean, because sometimes when I'm out in the countryside and I'm walking the dogs, and I look up at these really old trees, and I see how tall they are, and I'm thinking, years ago, how people feared the existence of giants. And you can think, well, I can see where that primal fear comes from. When you see giant, great trees towering over you, when you see huge hilltops and things like that. Now, you take
Mm,
that and bring that to the sea, where, as you say, so much of it is unknown. And even to this day, so
yes.
much of it is unknown. So that's like huge unknown fear, but not only it's not only the fear of what's not in, it's not just darkness. So you've got the fear of the dark, if you like, which is comparable to the fear of the sea. But it's also the idea that it's this immensity that the ocean is. The fact that the ocean is, it's still more of the earth. It covers, the sea covers more of the earth than any other, than anything else, So you've got
Yeah.
this, we're still mainly the sea. And under that, we know there's all these canyons and mountains of the past, if you like, things that were above sea level at certain periods in history and things like that. And it's that vastness and fear of that. I loved it that you mentioned about the daylight thing. I mean, again, what Spielberg does do with this picture um, is in many ways, so favorite horror film. So a lot of people, some people like to say this isn't a horror film, and that
I know it
includes horror.
is.
And that's
Yeah.
what it includes horror fans. I've got several books, comprehensive books on horror movies, where they're going, okay, we're going to do an illustrated history of horror, or we're going to do a deep dive into the history of horror. Now, we're not going to include Jaws. Amount of times people say that we're not going to include Jaws, and their reasoning for that is it's often strange. Like there's some people say, well, it's not really a horror film. It's not really. Some people go, it's an action adventure. Well, it's more in the thriller category. And my view is the fact that yeah, Jaws definitely is a horror film. It's
100%.
definitely a horror film. It's more than a horror film. It transcends the horror genre 100%. It really does. But it's still a horror film. It's still there in its DNA. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
It's got a floating head missing an eyeball in it.
yeah. There's scenes that genuinely horrify you. I mean, to qualify for it to be horror or terror, that's eternal literary argument, isn't it? Horror
Mm,
versus terror. Terror is supposed to be more to do with the suspense, more to do with the anticipation, which Jaws 100% has. I mean, it really,
mm.
really definitely has terror. I mean, use the word terror as well. It definitely has terror. But it's still horrifying. There's still the horrifying view. When Chrissy Watkins's body turns up, when Ben Gardner's body floats through the through the through the ship, through his
Mm.
boat, sorry, ship, through the boat, we see that big jump scare, and jump scares, which, as we know, are trademarks of horrors. I mean, the slashers that followed definitely owe some degree of debt to Jaws. I think,
And the music as well, like everything about it. That I mean,
yeah, yeah,
that we
yeah,
could we could probably spend an hour talking about the music
yeah,
alone. It's so iconic. Like
yes,
you'll never beat that. And I always like the fact that because in water you have that slow, dreamlike state of not being able
yeah,
to move as fast, and this
yeah,
predator can move so much faster, is so much more adept. So you do
yes.
almost have that dreamlike quality of like you trying to run away from that thing, but you're never going to be
Yeah,
able to move
absolutely. And
fast
you're
enough.
in, yeah, as you say, dreamlike quality, where often you're running away and your feet are in mud and you've got all that kind of feel. The sort of thing that was, brought back in like Nightmare on Elm Street when you've got,
Yes.
exactly, you've got Heather Langenkamp, trying to get up the stairs and her feet go in the goo and all that. So many people can relate to that in horror. In Jaws, that is again in the water when you're right in that domain. There's a good reason why, making a comparison to my martial arts background, why BJJ uses the shark as their analogy. There's always that. They love putting that. I did a two-part podcast called The Way of the Shark, and I used comparisons a little bit from some of Jaws, where I I use the beginning, Peter Benchley does this superb opening chapter. It's one of the best opening chapters in fiction you'll ever
Oh,
come across. Yeah, which is great because Spielberg adapts it, but doesn't try to compete with it. Do you know what I mean? He does his own thing totally, whereas
yeah.
Benchley goes, "I'm going to tell you what a shark is, and I'm going to make you terrified of this evolved killing machine, and that's pretty much what Benchley does, just with his knowledge, his biological knowledge is all in there without making it boring, and it's just this, the great fish, move through the water, you've got this sort of thing, and you're like, oh my god, it's already starting, I remember reading that as a kid, long after I'd seen the film, but then you pick the book up and the anticipation's already there. And I went, oh my god, this is such a good opener. So I put that in my Way of the Shark, but I did it to describe, a person fighting a ground fighter for the first time, back in the early days.
That
The
does
early
feel
days,
like drowning.
yeah, it's mixed martial arts, and they always say, the argument, they used to love part of the Brazilian jiu-jitsu propaganda used to be, do what you like, but sooner or later this fight's going to end up on the ground, and the ground's an ocean. I'm the shark, and most people
Mm.
can't even swim. And honestly, and I've seen it happen so many times with people who are twice the size of opponents and haven't got any ground fighting experience. Often quite arrogant fighters who I've known of people who've got undeniable, fighting experience, real world fighting experience. But when they've gone down, they've been flailing around exactly like that, like somebody who can't swim. And then you've
Yes.
got somebody there who just sort of zips around and probably more comparative to a spider actually when I see a
Yeah,
person
trapping.
fight when they're
Yeah.
going around, they're wrapping them up and immediately so good. But yeah, you can see and going, oh yeah, I can see that shark. And I know why they thought shark. They thought, yeah, it's a shark. That's what it is. It's like being hunted by a shark. You're hit with the takedown, which is which is the shoot, which is
Mm.
the effectively how a mako or a great white or a tiger shark or a lot of the other man-eating sharks would attack. You hit with it, boom, right, but usually it's coming right from underneath, and then you're taken apart underneath, systematically. And but anyway, my experience goes to so my first early experience. I was 5 years old when I first watched Jaws.
Awesome. Good stuff. I
Yeah,
think I was a little bit
perfect
older,
age,
but
I
not much.
thought. Perfect age. Alphabet, now Jaws. Yeah, perfect education there. Could explain a lot. Okay. And I saw it, I think I saw it mainly alone. I hastened to add in a room. My mum was getting on with stuff and it was run on the
Yeah.
TV. It was the 8th of October, 1981, which was a Thursday, UK premiere of Jaws. So I saw
But
Jaws.
dude, it was this is the thing, it was marketed to children as well. It's one of those
Yeah,
first ever horror films that kids
yeah.
like you would never
That's
get
why people don't want to call it a horror film.
Yes,
The
exactly,
reason why
which
people
is
don't
such
like
a
put it horror film
shame.
can go, pick up it's for kids. But if you want to talk horror, it also breaks all the sort of like the rules you don't do it. Don't kill a kid, it kills a kid. Don't
Don't
kill a
the girl
don't
gets
kill a dog,
away.
don't kill the dog, it kills the
Yeah,
dog.
whichever.
It does that. So two of the victims are a child and a dog. So it tells you straight away, no one's safe. Full
Yeah.
stop. No one's safe. Right? Anyone can be killed. No one is safe. Okay. So there's that. Yeah. But as you say, it's marketed for kids. It's got nowadays it's got a 12A certificate. And back in the day, it was kind of PG-ish. I don't know what I
Yeah, it
can't
was
remember.
I think it
Yeah,
was a
PG.
PG. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
PG.
Which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
mind
No,
blowing.
yeah, mind you, then again, had hearts being torn out with our PG certificate
It was
in
a different
1980,
time. Well,
in
yeah, you had
82.
you had like threads and stuff being shown on TV. We could get
Yeah,
away
yeah.
with it back
Yeah,
then.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So there I was, and this is, and again, when I read about this experience, because I tracked it down, I thought, when did I first watch Jaws? Because I was just trying to
Mm.
remember it. So I've, being the geek I am, I look back at my history, I look back at the history, and I found the date, and I found the first, when was the UK premiere for Jaws? I went, oh my god, I saw the UK premiere of Jaws. I can't believe it. I saw the UK TV premiere of Jaws. So it was 8th of October, 1981, a Thursday. Okay, and apparently almost half the nation tuned in to watch it. It was
Bloody hell.
23.25 million viewers. Yeah.
Did all
So you
right.
won't get figures like that today. You know what I
Ever.
mean? Streaming services like that. We only had 3 channels at the time. This was just before Channel 4 was out. Okay, so Channel 4 didn't exist in this country. We had 2 BBC channels and
ITV.
ITV. That was it. That was
Yeah.
it. That was 3 channels. I remember when Channel 4 was launched. I'm really showing my age now. So anyway, 5 years old. little Jamie hears about this film that's going to be on Jaws from the adults on the show. Oh yeah, this oh, it's a scary shark film. All the rest of it. That's all I heard about. So I put it on, and playing. I'm probably playing around. Normally I'm doing in the wagon and that, and it's on. I'm seeing. I remember the Hooper in the cage. So much I
Oh,
remember about it. The beginning. I mean, the beginning is the Chrissy Watkins attack. I love the fact that Spielberg doesn't try to fully adapt Benchley's thing. In fact,
no.
he wasn't a fan of Benchley's book on the whole, was he? Because he didn't like the characters.
Is that true? I did not
Yeah,
know
yeah, yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if he didn't like the book. I don't know, it's a bit too far to say he didn't like the book, but he didn't like the characters. The characters he found to be quite unlikable because you've got
Mm,
this, Roy Scheider's character. Martin Brody is very much, he's a very, hard, grizzled, old, worn out old cop, from New York. Doesn't obviously we've got the whole thing about him not wanting to get in the water and not
yeah.
in all places turned up at an island to do it. But the idea is that it's sort of like a bit of a retirement project, but he's also got this totally disaffected relationship with his wife, and his wife has an affair, of course, with Alan Brody,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Hooper. Hooper has the affair with Brody, with Ellen Brody, which Spielberg decides, no, not having that. That's not in the story, and probably a good choice actually for the
Yeah.
film. How the film works, I don't, it's got a very noirish feel. I feel Jaws has. It's very
Yeah.
typical of 1970s pulp fiction. It really is. I mean, I'm
It's a
not.
beautiful book. It's
Yeah,
streamlined to hell as well.
yeah,
It
yeah, yeah.
moves
No, I'm
so
not.
well.
I'm definitely not putting it down. It
It's its
is.
own beast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very much his own beast. It works well on the page,
Yeah.
and it really, really does. And it has its essence definitely deserves to be adapted, which it was, of course, into a film that some people consider to be the greatest movie of all time. Again, it's one of these movies that, again, that's why it's quite intimidating to talk about it in a way, because so many other people have done such a better job than me. Some other people are far more geeky than I am and have done such analytic. This is a film that, a bit like The Godfather, that is taken apart piece by piece by so many people online. And I love listening to them as well. You're listening to
Oh
video.
God, yeah.
Yeah, every video pops up on Jaws now, I'm just glutton for listening to it. And nearly always it's good. Nearly always it's. I have to say, maybe I need to be a bit more discerning with my choices on who I listen to on YouTube and watch on YouTube. But usually it's
There are
like,
so yeah, I
yeah,
mean there's a whole documentaries. There are documentaries longer than the film on YouTube that I
oh
absolutely
yeah,
adore.
huge.
I'll put a quick shout out as well. There's a podcast, Cinema of Meaning, which I love.
Yeah,
It's sort of
yes,
partly
yeah,
inspired
yeah,
this. Their dive into or their episode about Jaws was first
yeah. I
bloody
mean,
class.
well, jumping massively ahead here, we have the Book of Quint.
Right, amazing. I've not
Okay,
seen
right.
that.
So the Book of Quint. I suppose I might as well mention it now because it just seems to naturally come out of that part. I kind of have a bit of a structured thing here. That's gone out. That's gone to pot.
Good.
It's written by a guy called Ryan Dacko, and Ryan started a podcast called The Jaws Obsession. Okay,
Amazing.
okay, right, and he was a huge fan of Jaws, and unlike me, he has been to sea big time. He's worked. He's been heavily involved on that side of it all, so he knows all about nautical terminology, and he can get into the mind of a character like Quint, and he's taken the character of Quint and he's written a prequel, and
Oh wow.
he's had the Benchley estate give their blessing.
Woo.
Yes, they
That's
gave their blessing to
awesome.
the book. And the whole campaign now, he's written the screenplay. The campaign now is to try and get Steven Spielberg to adapt this as the prequel to Jaws on its 50th anniversary in
Oh
2025.
man. So
Yeah.
does that deal with the Indianapolis thing or is
Yes.
it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Oh wow.
this is just it. When I've watched the documentaries on Jaws, I thought I enjoyed Jaws 2. I mean, Jaws
Yeah.
2 is a really, really good sequel. It's not
It's
Godfather 2. It's not a Godfather Part 2 sequel. Let's not be silly. It's not Empire Strikes Back sequel, but it's
yeah.
a serviceable sequel. The characters follow a believable trajectory. It's a bit silly in some parts, but on the whole, it is a good, solid sequel as far as sequels are concerned. 3 and 4 are awful. Okay,
Four is something else.
I know 4 is one of the worst movies of all time. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? You got the original on that list of the best from the best movies of time. The 4 is like one of the yeah, and but 3 to be fair deserves just all the criticism it gets anyway. And I like Simon McCorkindale. I was an old Manimal fan, but
Mm.
but still, it was 3 and 4 sucked. But 2 was a serviceable sequel, and he's included two. Sorry, he's included as part of the canon, and it's based. It's not a prequel to Benchley's book. It's a prequel to the movie. So he's used the
Amazing.
movie as canon, which is a good choice, I think, again as well,
Yeah.
because the Quint character is so much better developed through Robert Shaw and Steven Spielberg in the film. In the book, he's not a likable character. He's this kind of racist. He's not particularly. You get more of the Captain Ahab, Moby Dick influence in the
There's a
film.
huge Moby Dick. So yeah. I really felt that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Spielberg makes a point of it, doesn't he? I mean, when we get our introduction to Quint, he's watching Moby Dick on the cinema and laughing. Okay, which is interesting because I've known wild animal trainers behave exactly the same way when they watch a depiction of wild animal training in a movie. Like you watch old circus pros and they're watching a movie about circus. They'll do that. You'll
Like
laugh
me
out loud in the
watching.
cinema.
That's like
Yeah,
me watching wrestling films, mate.
yeah,
So-
exactly. We know it's that kind of laughter, and it's great. So that was his introduction. Clearly a homage to Moby Dick, though, and the Captain Ahab character. Spielberg's clearly taken a lot more of that influence on the Quint character, and Robert Shaw's, obviously a writer himself, very talented writer himself, and puts in a performance of a lifetime, and amazing.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
He didn't
yeah.
win an Oscar for it, did he? In his
No, he deserved it. But
yeah,
yeah,
100%, 100%.
100% fabulous performance, Robert Shaw. And of course, my views on the characters have changed over time as well. As well,
Mm,
as a kid, I'm Sheriff. I'm Sheriff Martin Brody. I mean, Sheriff Martin Brody is my hero. He's the guy who I like. But then as you get a bit older, you kind of you start realizing how great Quint is. And what a fabulous character he is. And yeah, and that wonderful dynamic between the three of them. You've
Oh,
got
it's perfect. The
yeah,
acting is unbelievable. Yeah.
yeah, and the character development is so good as well. And then
Yes.
you've got the whole speech with which Robert Shaw partly wrote. He partly wrote, wasn't he? Wasn't you've got script doctor in there. You've got a lot of influences in that actual thing. I mean, again, I don't want to go too much into the background of that because I'm pulling from what memories I can without
Mm,
notes. But Ryan Ducko does a whole episode on that about the whole speech, the origin of the speech, who the real authors are, etc., and he does great detective work on it. I mean, honestly, the minutiae he goes into the film really puts up a great argument for how great a film Jaws is.
yeah.
Just any attempt to attack at a plot hole, he's on it. He's on it, and he justifies its place, its reasoning, and it's very hard. It's a very hard argument to refute.
And I would say one of the biggest things about it when I was doing some research into it myself, how lucky it was to all to come together. A shark that didn't work. So many of the iconic lines are ad libs, or
Yeah,
like you say,
yeah,
entered in at the 13th hour, where
yeah,
suddenly like, why don't we do this? And yet they managed to stitch it all together. Basically Spielberg updating Jewel into Jaws. Jewel is almost a prequel to
yeah.
Jaws in a way, and I would always say a film called The Ghost in the Darkness is
Oh,
it's
my
my like
cousin's worked on it. My cousin worked, and actually, that same funny you should say that. That same cousin was the one who laughed watching. He enjoyed Water for Elephants, but he's the same one who laughed at a certain scene a scene you shouldn't laugh at in Water for Elephants, but at the ridiculousness of it. He laughed at that. He worked on Ghost in the Darkness, and Ghost in
I
the Darkness is Jaws in Africa.
100%. I always say if someone wants to, they get to Jaws too, and they go, I need another film like Jaws. It
Yeah.
hasn't got sharks in it, but watch The Ghost in the Darkness because it Val is yeah. We're not talking about that film today, but it's a
No,
great.
no, but the legacy of Jaws, I think, is important to mention as well
Mm,
as a good reference because okay, so after Jaws, we have so many imitations of Jaws. I mean, it's huge,
yes.
its own subcategory, and there are subcategories of that subcategory. So you've got so number one, we've got this massive slew of shark movies, right?
Oh
Okay, and
God,
right to
yeah.
this very day,
To
we've
this
got
day, Megan, yeah.
yeah. Which 90, I'd say, go as far as to say about 98% of them are crap, are absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
And you've got to divide them up into so bad it's good, or so bad it's bad again. Okay, and that to nice try, but I mean, Deep Blue Sea's entertaining enough. It's got some great moments. It's an entertaining enough movie, but it's not great. Meg, I enjoyed reading the novel of Meg actually.
Yes.
Yeah, to be honest, and that was a good airport reading. That was, Meg. I did enjoy doing that, but again, of its time in a way, because it's a film. It got me at the right moment. For the rest of it, I was really looking forward to seeing the movie. I had my anticipation way too high for the movie, but serviceable sort of Jaws
Statham.
imitation.
Yeah,
Really like that.
exactly.
However, the best films I've seen are influenced by Jaws. Okay, so obvious ones. Okay, Ghost and Darkness, good one. You definitely mentioned there.
Mm.
Piranha
Yeah,
was was a good one. Okay, again, I love Joe Dante. Gremlins. It's one of my favorite Christmas movies. If you were asking, is Gremlins. So Joe Dante. It's straight in there with Piranha. Orca. Okay,
oh
is
wow, with Richard
yeah,
Harris. Yeah.
yeah, Richard Harris. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good film, which again really, but goes into the. In many ways, Jaws nicks some ideas from that because it starts using the revenge sort of angle, the idea that it becomes a
Yeah.
person. It doesn't work for sharks. Works kind of an angle with a when you're dealing with an orca and that sort of thing. In a way, if you sort of stretch and look at it at a certain angle, it kind of works. You've got that, that's got some genuinely shocking moments in it as well. Orca is good. It's not great, but it's good. It's good. Again, Richard Harris's good performance there.
Do you think
Um,
that's why he named the boat the Orca in the film?
yeah, I do. Yeah, because orcas, as we know, hunt sharks.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's
good.
orcas hunt sharks. And you notice in Jaws too, there's almost like they shoot one back at orca because the shark, the second shark,
Yeah,
attacks an orca. He's
yeah.
an orca, so there's almost like a have one back, kind of thing there. So I think there's Richard Harris Orca, Piranha,
Yeah.
Joe Dante's film, and another really fun movie playing with a urban legend, Alligator from
Oh my
1980.
God,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which is happy memories of video renting. That was and
Oh,
the dad bringing it
flipping
back. Yeah, which is good fun. And it's a good nonsense sort of movie.
That's really
It's
worth
a good
seeking
it's a
out.
good the sort of I don't say it's a good bad movie, but it's got some genuinely good performances in there, as well as being a bit of a silly story and some of the effects are very dated and stuff like that. But it's lots of good fun. So you've got watch out, I've got doorbell going in a
No.
moment. No, someone should get that anyway. But
Yeah,
okay, so but of course those movies are fine,
yeah.
but the greatest movies inspired by Jaws, Alien.
I was going to say that as well. Yeah.
Jaws in space. That's how it was sold. It was sold as Jaws in space. And just like Jaws transcends horror, so Alien transcends any inspiration or influence of Jaws to the point where people think of it as a haunted house movie in space now, Alien.
Mm,
Not many people now think about the Jaws influence, but I still see it very much the Jaws influence.
100%. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
picking them
yeah,
off.
yeah.
Yeah, not yeah. The bonding of a crew. Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
there's so much there, and they turn the influence, whereas you've got the male thing going on you've got the masculinity angle with Jaws, you've now got the femininity through Ellen Ripley, iconic female character, one of the best in genre pictures, and played by the great Sigourney Weaver in Alien, and then of course Predator, which is in many ways Alien in the jungle.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with
Exactly.
that.
Which then goes back to an action adventure because is Alien a horror? Is Predator a horror? A bit difficult to say Predator's a horror, even though it has horror elements in it. But I would say it's pretty closer to the action adventure end.
I would argue with some of the
Yeah,
like some of the camera angles and Dutch
yeah,
angles and
yeah,
flipping the camera used as well. I would say, yeah, the Schwarzenegger influence is there to make sure there's guns and muscles in it, but I
yeah.
would still say it's very, very horror based.
It's got a horror part to it.
Yeah,
Yeah, Alien is definitely a horror. In fact,
100%.
Stephen King, and he's not the only one, kind of puts it as almost like a perfect horror in many respects, with Alien. But again, back to Jaws with that influence. And I like to think of also Jaws' influences then as well. So, we have a 1932 movie called Tiger Shark with Edward G. Robinson, okay, which isn't particularly very good. Okay, so it's a bit of more of a romance than I think. But again, you've got the element. That's one of the few films before Jaws where sharks are really a big threat. I mean, we get sharks popping up a little bit in Bond, prior
That's
to that.
true.
Yeah, there's here and there, but they're not. It's not. It's there, but it's nothing like what the Jaws influence will do
That's
in
true. Yeah.
terms of shark as an antagonist. Um, you've got Moby Dick, you've got Old Man at the Sea with Hemingway. We've got this whole thing about uh, essentially, the Santiago character is a bit like, again, is another influence on the Quint character, where he's battling to try and get this giant marlin, and but it's all about him trying to get this giant marlin. The whole story is about that, and the sharks get it off him, so it's got this whole sort of journey. So definitely pulled, Spielberg pulled that from there. Creature from the Black Lagoon. Okay, obviously,
Oh yeah.
the POV shots, you have the creature from the Black Lagoon. That's no. I've heard so much stuff, people talking about that. Oh yeah, God, Jaws must have got that. Definitely, you get all the underwater sequences, all the camera angles from that. That's definitely in there. There's the Enemy of the People. Again, it's a story about where you've got this hot springs area becoming a tourist attraction, and then discovering that it's polluted, and commerce sort of fighting against the lone man trying to save the people, if you like, because
Mm.
sort of stories. You've got Enemy of the People. And Spielberg said that Enemy of the People was very much a part of Moby Dick meets Enemy of the People. It's what he saw Jaws as being. So very much in his mind. I always straight away my first instinct when I saw Jaws through adult eyes was Hitchcock.
But the birds, I was going to say, the birds was the one that
Birds,
put me
definitely.
down.
In
That
fact, there's
really,
even Brian Ducko does a great job at the beginning of. In fact, I think it's his first podcast he does on the whole Jaws Obsession series. It's just a wonderful journey to listen to him, how he builds up to, and I'm going to write this book called The Book of Quint, or I've written this book called The Book of Quint, and you hear his whole development and his whole journey to it getting into mainstream publishing. It's great,
amazing.
but yes, yeah, definitely recommend it. It said, but he in his, I think it's his first podcast, he actually starts talking about the opening sequence of Jaws. Just at the very beginning, you hear the noise, which
Yeah,
very reminiscent of the beginning of the birds.
100%.
Yeah, yes. I mean, there's been stuff done with the sound design since, but in the original version, it's very much comparative to the birds. Sort of it's you get that. So was that a Hitchcock reference to it? I mean, there's so much in there, that I can see very Hitchcockian in Spielberg's approach.
Amazing, like you talk about all the references and influences that you have through Jaw and how it's inspired so much, and all from what essentially, like I say, was we should never forget the absolute um effect it had on cinema as well. It introduced the idea of a summer blockbuster, and something that really, when you pick it apart, is so horrific. A man getting bitten in half and stuff as well. How it became such a zeitgeist and became so popular. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's quite a difficult one to actually say. Again, I've actually looked at I mean, again, a lot of it was down to the marketing. I
Yeah.
mean, it happened to be a great film. Let's remember the big point that Spielberg makes, that Jaws. If he'd have made Jaws today, he'd have ruined it.
Mm.
Yeah, and I've heard someone once say, someone a lot wiser than me, from the filmmaking world, once said that, if you look at like New Hollywood, from which Spielberg is kind of like the youngest member of sort of New Hollywood. I don't know if he was particularly part of that set. He was certainly friends with George Lucas,
Mm.
but you have that sort of the Lucas, Scorsese, Coppola, Brian De Palma group, right? So you've got that group of New Hollywood, very much so,
Mm.
and then you've got Camino as well, and it kind of, the idea is that it ended in sort of 79, 80, if you like, and then but most of those were directors of very much of the 70s, and you see that influence on all their later works, even though they do fantastic movies afterwards in the 80s and the 90s and up to the present day. They were very much directors, you see that New Hollywood influence is very much in there. That if you like, the auteur theory is very much a part of that.
Yeah.
Spielberg adapted to every decade he's been in. Every one of his times, he's very much. If you think of a Spielberg 80s movie, it's very much an 80s movie. If you
Yes,
think of
very.
a Spielberg
Yeah.
90s movie, it's really 90s. Do you know what I mean? Every era that he's in, he's very representative of that particular time. He adapts to it better in many ways than the other directors. So whatever's happened, I mean, again, so number one, you've got Spielberg, brilliant work with the film, and that lightning in the bottle thing that's going on there. Like he said, he would have ruined Jaws if he made it today, even though he has said, "Oh, I think it's great somebody remade it." I don't. I'd hate to see Jaws remade. I
Yeah.
think I'd hate it. I can't think of a way to do it. One time I thought maybe we could do it as a TV series and have it closer to the book, and I thought, no, 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 no,
It's
leave it,
fine.
leave it
Yeah.
alone. Leave it. It's not. It just isn't. The book works great as we've just discussed now within its own creature, its own beast. The film is very much its own creature, its very own,
100%.
its own beast, and it's very much of a don't remake Jaws. The special effects. What more can you do? Look,
Exactly.
look what Deep Blue Sea did to it in the 90s. Look what Meg does it today. That's what you're looking at. That's what Jaws
Yeah.
looks like now. And again, full respect to Ryan Ducko there, he says that Jaws is not a film about a monster shark. Jaws is a lot of things that features a monster shark.
100%.
It's a
Yeah.
drama. It's a life drama that features a giant shark. I mean, the real terror of Jaws is number one, the idea that, oh my God, if we go into that water, what can happen to us? This thing the horror of that part of it. But then you've got the Amity Island thing, very much represented by the sort of the secondary antagonist in the story, the Mayor Larry Vaughan, who's
Yeah.
who's not a totally unsympathetic character when he starts to finally realise, he comes to the conclusion when it takes the death, it's the death of Alex Kidnap, I think of that, and the
Yeah.
idea that his son could have been, in that he knows his son was swimming in the sea at that time. It takes this happening on the 4th of July, this whole, it was my birthday, incidentally, okay, all that happening for him to then make that realization. He doesn't then double down again and go, no, we've still got to keep the beaches opening. We've got to try and he takes that to actually happen to him, which a lot of human beings, it does take something as massive like that to realize that something has got to change. That you've got to do something with it. So you've got that drama that's going on throughout the story. The shark, the fact that you hardly see the shark because it's broken, because the special effects weren't caught up to what
They needed. Yeah. Yeah.
wanted to present. So he's having to work that, and then you've got the fantastic, and it cannot be underestimated, underrated, overrated. John Williams, the John
Unbelievable.
Williams,
Perfect. Yeah.
yeah, John Williams, which Spielberg was against. I mean, Spielberg thought that John Williams was having a laugh when he said to him, "This is what I'm going to use for the shark." If you actually find it, it is. If you heard that story, if you ever look at the stories, John Williams and Spielberg, he actually said to Spielberg, "This is what I'm going to do for the shark," and Spielberg went, he thought he was joking. It's just two notes. You think about it, it's just two notes. It's just it's
amazing though.
yeah, exactly. It's E and F sharp. That's all it is. It's just E and F sharp. Boom. I'm not a musician, but yeah, and it's just, and he goes, no, trust me, this is it. And the music, and the interesting is that the music is used so well. It's the thing they miss in Jaws 2. But in the first film, they use the music. The shark is only present when the music's present. So there's other scenes when you get false flags, when you get like a bit of a loot and bust kind of situation going on there, where it's going to be something else. When you rewatch Jaws, it's not it because the music's not playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. When the music plays, it's the shark. Because some people go, "Is that the shark? Is that not the shark?" Because that's always often the thing where when you're seeing it from the POV, when you're not seeing the actual shark itself, something else is going on. Is it the shark or isn't it the shark? So if you look at it, it's like when Martin Brody runs into the water and all the rest of it. There's no build up with the music is not the theme. It's not the shark theme. It's not the shark theme playing. So that's very clever. Why was it so successful? Yes, the film itself, brilliant, speaks for itself, but you cannot underestimate the marketing. The marketing was so great for it.
And I think, like, bringing it to a close, I would honestly say one of the best things that people can do is, like you said already, how you identify with different characters. I think it's one of the most perfect films that whenever I watch it, I always take something different from it. Indeed, like, if it goes from a creature feature to now, as you said, the shark is less and less important. It's more about, for me, man's facing his own mortality. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what the creature is. Essentially, it's how when they have that discussion on the boat, it's like how will they meet their maker? How will they meet it when the time comes? And that really resonates with me now for some reason. So probably said something about me. Mirror shining a mirror back on
Yeah,
itself.
yeah. Definitely,
Oh,
definitely. It's very introspective in certain in many different cases. And yeah, exactly. You know, you definitely get that out of Jaws. I mean, there's so much that you could go into with you know, and which so many other people have done. And yeah, and it's just but yeah, as you say, as you rewatch it, and even going back to that primal, the idea that why it's a favorite horror movie. One of the things that must have come about it was that obviously I saw it first when I was a kid, that loved it, rewatched it when it was on TV again, watched Jaws 2, videoed it, watched it like that. Then as a teenager, I picked up the book for the first time, read it in the school library, thought it was amazing, like that as its own entity. And then I didn't really come back to it again properly until it was on TV. It was on TV in the 2000s. So I'm an adult now, you know, living with
mm,
family. It was probably just before my daughter was born, or around that sort of time, I think. It must have been around the time my daughter was born, actually. And it came, and she, of course, she loves it now as well, you know, because I took her to the cinema to see when the 3D version came out, you know, in 2022, the re-release, which was
mm.
brilliant. It actually, 3D version actually works great. You know, it doesn't, because it's not exploitative of being 3D.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
works. Yeah.
yeah, so really well there. But this was a key point that really made me realize again, you know, why it was so great, because I hadn't seen Jaws for so long, and it was on TV, and it was halfway through it or whatever, and I can't even remember which jump scare it was, but I remember just watching it and then suddenly getting a chill when I saw it, and I was going, and this is like the 2000s, you know, we are neck deep in torture porn, and all
Yeah.
these other horror things have been thrown at us, every kind of angle, all the found footage stuff, psychological horrors on mass, huge kind of, like there was this sort of renaissance in the 2000s to really try and every horror genre was being attacked at that point, you know, to try and turn it into something else. All the remakes were coming out, you know, people trying to find you how far you was all this, you know, movies were going to, you know, you look at extreme cinema in the sort of 2000s and the you know, the early 2010s. It was so much in there, and I just saw this simple sort of film again, which is family viewing, and it got me, and I went, oh my god, I can't believe I'm so scared of Jaws. And it's like, this film's brilliant, you know. And then I showed it to someone else of another generation, not my daughter, and someone of another generation, and honestly, just a silly thing like just seeing the sharks just go through the water. She sort of thinks, she went, "Oh my god!" like that. And I was going, "You've seen all the CGI. You've seen
Mm.
all, you know, this effects that are now. You're very much this generation where everything's quite cynical and the past is a bit crappy and all the rest of it." And it caught her as well. So I thought to myself, "Oh my god!" So there's this is something special. This is still something special, and it's still gripping people now. You know.
And yeah, I mean, completely, I agree. Thank you so much for your time today. And I think people should really go if they haven't seen it, or even if you've been a while, because I thank you for picking this one, because it was one that I went back and watched and realized how much it still resonates, and how what a perfect example of cinema it is. So yeah, thanks Jamie for all your insight and stuff. Today, sorry I've had to wrap it up a little bit early, but yeah, all the best, mate. And I'm sure we'll be back in touch with another film soon.
Thoroughly enjoyed it, Phil. Thank you very much, mate. Bye
Take
bye.
care, mate. All the